Good morning, everyone, and welcome into Wake and Take. It's your boy Jason, and we've got some football to talk about today. Today, we're going to be talking about a few news stories, little updates from around the league, and then we're going to take a look at some of these undrafted free agent rookies, see if any of them have a shot, or, I picked a few that I think have a shot, I guess is the way I should phrase this. So, guys, go ahead, take out your coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All right, welcome in, everyone. Glad to see you here on this morning on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you're watching. If you're listening on the podcast, shout out to you as well. Again, you can find the Wake and Take podcast link in every Wake and Take YouTube video description. Go subscribe to that and listen wherever you get your podcast. Good morning to you, Ryan. Good morning to you, Terminal Sarcasm. Hope you guys are doing well this fine Wednesday morning. I know I'm doing well. Before we get too far into the show, everyone listening, everyone that's already tuned in or starting the video right now, I actually finally got my Scott Fishbowl invite yesterday, so that is all set up. I will be drafting in the Scott Fishbowl division. The Scott Pilgrim division in Scott Fishbowl. Scott Pilgrim is my favorite movie. So I felt like, to help with the juju, I felt like I should pick a division with my favorite movie. So that's where we're at. There's still like 9 people left in the Scott Pilgrim division within the Scott Fishbowl. If you'd like to join my division, go ahead. Do it. I'd like to see you. Anyway, we've got some news to talk about, and then we're going to look at some undrafted free agents, and we'll start with Jahan Dotson. Jahan Dotson recently has started becoming a buy candidate kind of to a few people around the Dynasty streets, namely Podfather has come out and said, why aren't we really talking about Jahan Dotson? His best comparable player is Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett took some time to break out, and we saw a pretty good rookie season from him. And last year was just a bit of a down year, did not really look that good at all, struggled to capitalize on his touchdown scoring that he had in his rookie season. But Jahan Dotson is looking towards a brighter year 3. And looking towards a better quarterback. So here's what he had to say. He was interviewed yesterday. Here's some information from that. First off, on Jaden Daniels, he said that that's the quarterback he wanted. He says, I've known him since I was coming out in the draft. We were training together before he transferred to LSU when we were both down in Arizona. So we built a little relationship there. And then I kept up with him while he was at LSU. Obviously, he was the best player in college football last year, so it's really cool to team up and go at it with him this year. I would say building a relationship outside of the football field is going to be the quickest way to build his relationship with him, getting to know each other, getting to know what your quarterback likes to do, and then talking through things in the film room. The ultimate thing that will get us clicking the fastest is reps out on the field, and that's how we're going to build our connection. And then he talks about his season last year, and this is what he said. Yeah, I wasn't a fan of my season last year, so I went really hard at it this offseason, making sure that I'm better than I was last year, a lot better. Because I have really high expectations for myself, and I hold myself to a very high standard, he said. So I've been at it since about February. I'm really excited. I come in every day just to put the work in so I can reap the benefits. I'm starting to feel like I'm getting my swagger back. So I'm getting really excited. So I think that that's some good news, hearing that Jahan Dotson already somehow has a connection here with Jaden Daniels. They worked together while Jahan Dotson was graduating college, before Jaden Daniels was transferring from Arizona State to LSU. And I think that's some awesome stuff. Obviously, we've heard a ton of times about just how much it matters, this off the field connection and just your connection with the quarterback in general really does help lead to success. And we've seen the success from Jahan Dotson before. If you pull up his player page here at PlayerProfiler, you'll see that he's still only 24 years old. You'll see that he still runs a 4.4 40-yard dash. You'll see that he's got decent size at 5'11", 180 pounds. And you'll see that he's had over 500 yards in back-to-back seasons, which is not that bad. He had 7 touchdowns his rookie year, 4 touchdowns last year. And really, you could even see some underlying metrics as well. I mean, he ran the 4th most routes among wide receivers last season, so he was on the field a ton. Just really did struggle in the efficiency department, and hopefully just a new offense in general with Cliff Kingsbury and Dan Quinn, as well as a new quarterback upgrade, will help Jahan Dotson maybe tap back into the touchdowns that he saw his rookie season, but also just into his potential in general. Jahan Dotson right now is cheap as hell to acquire. And so I would be doing it. In fact, one of our buy candidates on tonight's Trade Gods episodes is Jahan Dotson. Matty Kiwoom's going to be talking about him, so make sure you tune into Trade Gods tonight to hear a little bit more about Jahan Dotson and why you need to be buying him. But there's basically somebody in this Commanders offense is going to be a really good value. And why not go for the one that we've already seen some production before in his rookie season? Get some Jahan Dotson on your rosters, guys. Why not? If it fails, you didn't spend too much to get him, but he does still have that ceiling. Was a first-round pick, right? So Jahan Dotson, look at him. Next bit of news we have is about the Titans running back room. As we know, and as we've been talking about a lot here at Wake and Take, I love both Tennessee Titans running backs. Some people are saying, nah, you've only got to get Tyjae Spears. Some people are saying, nah, you've only got to get Tony Pollard. Only one of these guys is going to be a bell cow. And I've been saying time and time again that these guys, there's not going to be a bell cow. It is going to be just both of them catching passes, being explosive in the run game, and staying fresh. It's going to be, I would assume, really a 50-50 timeshare. Really, I think that these are both running backs with very similar skill sets on an offense that wants to pass the ball a ton. So here's what the Titans running back coach had to say about the room. Both guys you don't have to worry about in terms of counting touches, in terms of handoffs, running the ball, because they can both catch the ball fairly well out of the backfield. In that respect, I'm not counting touches in terms of rushes. I'm counting, hey, you got 10 rushes, but you also got 6 catches for a total of 16 touches. And I think they're going to have a really good feel for each other on and off the field. Again, it sounds like even the running back coach is doing what I'm expecting here from this Tennessee Titans backfield, and that they're both going to get carries. They're both going to get a ton of receptions. And for him to even specifically say 10 rushes and 6 catches as his kind of ideal what would happen, that's awesome. That is awesome for both running backs if they can both get that week in, week out, and I'm sure they will. Everything this Tennessee Titans offense is doing with their new head coach, Callahan, out of Cincinnati, is signaling that they want to pass the ball on first down, pass the ball on second down, and pass the ball on third down every single time. They got Calvin Ridley. They already had DeAndre Hopkins. They just brought in Tyler Boyd, who, of course, he already has the connections with. And then, of course, Treylon Burks and Chig Okonkwo are still there. And then now you have 2 pass-catching running backs in Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard. They might literally lead the league in pass attempts next season. So I would say get both Tennessee Titans running backs, especially if an injury happens. There's some massive contingent upside there. But I think they both hold some value regardless of if there's an injury. I think that they will both be solid, probably RB2, flex range players that are going to get you about 10 points a week pretty easily because of their pass catching. So I like getting Tony Pollard. I like getting Tyjae Spears, and I most definitely like buying Will Levis right now. I think that he is going to have what it takes to really help this Tennessee offense take that step forward. Now, of course, it's going to be the last chance for him. If he doesn't do well, then they're going to get a quarterback next year. But something's just telling me that he's going to be fine. He's got a really good supporting cast, and his new head coach coming in knows a lot about quarterbacks, of course, working with Joe Burrow and Jake Browning even last year. So let's go Tennessee Titans, this new revamped offense. Another offense that was revamped was the Detroit Lions last season, and namely a big part of that was Jahmyr Gibbs. And last year he had a little bit of a split workload with David Montgomery. Well, Lions general manager Brad Holmes has come out and said this: I definitely would expect Gibbs to see more of a load, but David Montgomery will still be here too. Dan and I love that 1-2 punch of him and David, but speaking on specifically him being a rookie last year, even when he had some pops in the Kansas City game in the opener, I was watching like, hey, he's still trying to feel for the game. He was fast, and we actually needed him to slow down a little bit. But once he got to that sweet spot, you kind of saw it in the Ravens game, and then you saw it again in the Raiders game, where I believe everyone saw the breakout. And I just think that Jahmyr Gibbs has more to offer in the passing game. So most likely you'll see an increase in that as well. Jahmyr Gibbs already getting a ton of receptions as a running back. In fact, I want to say he was way up there in the top last year. Let me pull it up to double check that on Player Profiler. But either way, hearing the general manager say that he wants Jahmyr Gibbs to have a little bit bigger of a load in year 2 is exciting stuff. However, I do just want to again point out that he did say that they do still love the 1-2 punch there with David Montgomery, which of course everyone does. You can have success with both of these running backs. We saw it years ago in New Orleans with Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram. It's very much the same thing here. And yes, Jahmyr Gibbs last year was top 10 in both receptions and target share and routes run. So he's out there already near the top of the league, gonna be going maybe a little bit further even in terms of receptions next year. So Jahmyr Gibbs still kind of doing everything you'd expect from a Dynasty RB1 right now. I would say still too expensive to acquire, but those of you that are rostering him now, congratulations, man. You've got yourself a nice little stud on your Dynasty roster. Jahmyr Gibbs looking like basically the next Alvin Kamara. We have a couple more bits of news here before we start talking about undrafted free agents. This next one is real quick. It is about the Atlanta Falcons. There's not much information out there about this. Maybe I'll have to do a little bit deeper of research. But there was an interview that came out yesterday, or kind of like a compilation of interviews, if you will, from Falcons OTAs. And one clip, part of it was pretty interesting. It was when they were interviewing Drake London, and he actually mentioned a summit that was led by Kirk Cousins and John Gruden that happened over the past few weeks. And it was Kirk Cousins, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and then Darnell Mooney. Those were the three receivers invited: Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Darnell Mooney. And if you'll remember, we talked about it last week. The very first clip we ever saw of Kirk Cousins throwing the ball as an Atlanta Falcon went straight to Darnell Mooney. And there's reports that that connection is growing right now with Kirk Cousins and Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney right now is like in the wide receiver 70 to 80 range in best ball and in dynasty rankings. He's only 26 years old. We've seen a 1,000-yard receiving season from him before, and there is a very huge opening for wide receiver 2 on this Atlanta Falcons offense, and they need the speed that Darnell Mooney brings. So I am buying Darnell Mooney. I've never really been a big Darnell Mooney fan. Most of that was because he was on the Bears, but I think that this rejuvenated Falcons offense could use a player like Darnell Mooney. And to hear the reports that he's going to summits with Kirk Cousins, that their connection is blossoming here at the OTAs, that gets me a little bit excited. So Darnell Mooney, a little bit of a cheap buy for today's episode. And then lastly, the NFL schedule is releasing tonight, so just stay tuned for that. If you'd like to check out the international games, all of those have been released. And there's also some reports that the opener for the Atlanta Falcons might actually be against the Pittsburgh Steelers. A little bit of an Arthur Smith revenge narrative to start week 1. Then I also believe another narrative I've been seeing is that Aaron Rodgers will be facing off against the Niners for week 1. And they had just signed the player that tore Aaron Rodgers' Achilles in week 1 last year. Now has to face up against him in week 1 this year. So that's kind of interesting and something to keep our eye on as well. But generally, when the schedule releases, I'm not one to get too crazy excited about it. We'll talk about some interesting matchups on tomorrow's episode, but let's face it, we're going to get excited about some matchup in week 11, and then when that matchup actually comes along, there's going to be a ton of injuries that happen, and like Carter Bradley, who we'll talk about in a second, is going to be starting for some reason, and it's not even that exciting of a game anymore. Things change a ton. Some of the offenses that we think are going to be good right now aren't actually good when the season comes around, and vice versa. Some of the defenses that we think will be good are going to be terrible defenses. So I still think it's very, very hard to look into what comes out in this schedule this early. But it's, of course, just nice. We could see these week 17 games and maybe start thinking about some stacks for our best ball rosters and all that stuff. But I'm not going to get too into the weeds with the schedule release information that comes out. We're just going to talk about some fun storylines and stuff for sure. Anyway, the next bit of stuff that we have to talk about today is undrafted free agent rookies. But before we get into that, why don't we hear a little bit about the Dynasty Dominator?
This episode is brought to you by Player Profiler, the Dynasty Deluxe package. The rankings are the best in the industry. It includes strategy mode, where you can say, hey, change the rankings to be win now. Oh, change the rankings to be productive struggle. There's also a draft planner to help strategize where you should take players, because the draft planner also includes ADP. There's a trade finder where we look up on My Fantasy League and we see trades that are done, including a particular player. Then there's a trade analyzer where you can plug in draft picks, players, and we assign a lifetime value to draft picks out 5 years. The best thing about our trade analyzer, it can't be gamed with volume. And there's mock draft data to see right now what's the market for player X versus player Y, including in the fall when very few mock drafts are happening. And our Dynasty guide, the Dynasty Dominator, would cost you $10 on Amazon, but you get it for free with Dynasty Deluxe, and you get our rookie guide for free, a $25 value. So you get all of that for $45. I mean, it's a great deal.
It is some really, really great stuff over with the Dynasty Deluxe package. And you can get more than just a Dynasty Deluxe package and get the all-in package right now using promo code Jason to get $20 off. That'll give you the Dynasty Deluxe, but that'll also give you access to everything else that Player Profiler has to offer, like the rankings, the trade analyzers, all that fun stuff. So go get the all-in package. So we have some undrafted free agent rookies to talk about here. And to preface this, I mean, let's be honest. We have seen success from undrafted free agent rookies. We know it can happen, but it is still very rare. And it's still also kind of uncertain of what you're really looking for. So I kind of have a mix of good players, a mix of good landing spots, and also a little bit of gut feel. So this may not be the most analytical kind of dive into these undrafted free agent rookies, but I do still think that there's some interesting stuff to talk about with all of these guys based on what we're hearing and what we can maybe come to hear over the rest of the season. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 undrafted free agents for you guys. We'll start with Frank Gore Jr. On the Buffalo Bills. He has now back-to-back seasons at Southern Miss with over 1,000 yards and has actually had some receptions with having 20 or more receptions with the past 3 seasons, which is pretty good. That's kind of my benchmark for college receiving running back. If you can get 20 receptions, you can probably bring that over to the NFL at least a small bit. And we've seen on the Buffalo Bills that they usually like having a between the tackles grinding running back. Now, Ray Davis is probably going to have that to start the year, but if an injury happens or Frank Gore Jr., Frank Gore's son happens to be even, 50% of what Frank Gore is or was, then he should be able to sniff the field at least a little bit. And all it takes as a running back is 1 injury or maybe even 2 injuries to become relevant. And he's on a really good offense that utilizes these grind them out type running backs. And he has the pedigree being Frank Gore's son. I know we've seen failure from like Randy Moss's son, for example, Thaddeus, but it's still kind of something fun to latch onto that makes us feel a little bit more confident. So Frank Gore Jr. going to the Buffalo Bills, has some solid college production, got himself a really good landing spot, of course, related to Frank Gore Sr., who was awesome at the NFL. And just being a running back usually helps you make it onto rosters, at least, staying on practice squad at worst case. And then if an injury happens, getting elevated from the practice squad to the roster. So Frank Gore Jr. is a player I'm keeping my eye on. Another one is Jalen Coker. We talked about him, I believe, yesterday, it was Monday's episode when we were going through some rookie minicamp stuff. Jalen Coker has been a surprising standout at the Carolina Panthers camps right now and has some solid college production from Holy Cross. So last year he had 1,000 receiving yards and 15 touchdowns. And the year before that, he had 900 receiving yards and 11 touchdowns. And his profile is highlighted by a 96th percentile burst score and a 96th percentile catch radius because he's 6'1", 210 pounds. And if you look at his college production, which I already mentioned, it's just not that bad. And we're hearing that he's standing out at the Carolina Panthers minicamps already. Dave Canales has been gushing about him. So I am keeping my eye on Jalen Coker. Another player that has been standing out at rookie minicamps, that was an undrafted free agent rookie, is Blake Watson. This is a running back from Memphis. And we've actually, of course, seen Memphis running backs succeed at the NFL level before, namely even Javonte Williams, who happens to be on the same team as him. Now, he only has 1 year at Memphis, did spend his previous 4 years of college at Old Dominion, but he finished last year with 1,152 rushing yards, 14 rushing touchdowns, and 53 receptions, as well as 480 receiving yards and 3 receiving touchdowns. So over 1,500 all-purpose yards and 17 touchdowns last year at Memphis, which is nothing to scoff at. He's got decent size as well at 5'9", 190 pounds. And Sean Payton has already been talking about him standing out at the rookie minicamps and has deemed him the Joker. Now, I will say, we have fallen for that trap a lot. Last year, for example, Greg Dulcich was the Joker and did nothing. We saw the Joker on the Falcons offense last year. Arthur Smith uses that as well. Cordero Patterson was the Joker, and he really did nothing with it as well. The only Joker we've actually seen success with in a Sean Payton system is Taysom Hill, and that's more so because he's a quarterback tight end type hybrid as opposed to just a running back who can go all over the field. But with the athleticism and the production that we've seen from Blake Watson, you might as well take a chance on him because that Broncos running back room is definitely wide open. Javonte Williams can't stay healthy. Samaje Perine's old. Jaleel McLaughlin is named Jaleel McLaughlin. And Audric Estime had a really bad combine. Now it's looking like Audric Estime can earn a big role, but so could Blake Watson as well. Draft capital doesn't mean that much. So keep your eye on Blake Watson. And we're going to go super deep here and talk about Jaxon Janke on the Texans. And this one, this is a dart throw. This is a total dart throw. But the name spoke to me. This is like, I was like, oh, Jaxon Janke. That just sounds like an NFL wide receiver. And he's going to the Houston Texans, which, you know, it's a very crowded receiving room. But we've seen some injuries last year where, you know, we're seeing Noah Brown get some reps. We saw all sorts of people getting some reps. So they have a deep receiving room for a reason. At some point, this guy might be able to separate himself. He went to South Dakota State University, so he went to a small school, played there for 5 years, but he did have some solid production, and I'm just going to leave it at solid. Over the last 3 years, he had a 1,000-yard season and 2 800-yard seasons, and has scored a total of 19 touchdowns over the last 3 years. But he's got solid size at 6'3", 210 pounds, and of course, looks like Cooper Kupp to me when I watch his highlights. Now, part of that could be because he's wearing number 10 and is also in a blue and yellow jersey like the Rams. But, you know, he's 6'3", 210 pounds. Cooper Kupp's like 6'2", 205 pounds. Also went to a smaller school. It's important to note that Cooper Kupp had insane college production, whereas Jaxon Janke didn't. And I'm not saying that he's going to be Cooper Kupp, but I just see a little bit of that in his game. You know, the small school, the good size, the decent production, all that stuff. So Jaxon Janke, Houston Texans undrafted free agent rookie, is a guy I'm keeping my eye on as well. Another one, and I'm going to go with a quarterback here, as mentioned earlier in my little joke about the schedule not meaning as much because who knows who's going to be starting in week 11. Carter Bradley is going to the Las Vegas Raiders. And if you guys will remember, after when I came back from the Senior Bowl, Carter Bradley was one of the quarterbacks that impressed me the most. And that was more so because all the other quarterbacks disappointed. Spencer Rattler was terrible. Joe Milton was terrible. Sam Harton was terrible. Michael Pratt was terrible. Michael Penix and Bo Nix were fine. And so was Carter Bradley. My big takeaway from watching Carter Bradley play is that he should be a backup quarterback in the NFL. I don't think he has starter chops or anything like that, but he's got decent size. He's like 6'2", 220 pounds, maybe 6'3", and he's Gus Bradley's son. So he's, you know, obviously got the NFL upbringing, knowing how football works, and he's played quarterback pretty well in his college career. His stats don't necessarily pop off the page, but what he has demonstrated is his ability to show up when it matters most. Of course, I mentioned he got the Senior Bowl invite. Part of that was only because he was at Southern Alabama. That's what he was the quarterback for, and so he kind of gets the free invite for being there. But at the Senior Bowl, he demonstrated that he belonged. He really did play well there, showed his prowess as a pocket passer, and was able to go through the motions. And if you look at some of his college stats, you can also see that he, you know, again, demonstrates that he shows up when it matters most. When he was the quarterback for the Toledo Rockets, he lost to Notre Dame when they were ranked number 8, but only by 3 points, actually. They lost 29-32, and he didn't turn the ball over at all against a top defense, which is just awesome. And then in 2022, when he transferred to Southern Alabama, he led them to their first bowl game since 2016 and finished with a 10-3 record. And in that bowl game, he threw for 360 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then also the next season led them back to another bowl game and even led the Southern Alabama Jaguars to a 33-7 win over Oklahoma State. So in these big games, he showed up. And so Carter Bradley is a backup quarterback that I'm keeping my eye on. He landed in a really good offense or spot, I guess, for him to take charge and maybe see some sort of starting next year, because Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew both have had a little bit of an injury concern and both aren't like the greatest quarterbacks in the world. I love Gardner Minshew. I think he's going to get the starter job, but anything could happen. And like I said, Carter Bradley just has this like prototypical long-term backup quarterback feel and aura about him. Not saying he's going to even be like Jake Browning, but could he be like Andy Dalton is right now, where he just sits and waits and maybe plays every once in a while? Sure. Why not? So Carter Bradley's a quarterback I'm keeping my eye on. Impressed with the Senior Bowl. Decent college production as well. Let's see. Sleeper has a Jaden Janke and a Jaxon Janke. How crazy is that? It is Jackson that I'm thinking of, the Texans receiver. The next player I want to talk about, and this one I have no idea if it even is going to amount to anything, but this is an undrafted free agent rookie wide receiver going to the Raiders as well. It's just the Raiders roster has some holes in it, and one of them is a deep threat. They did sign Jalen But I mean, the dude has struggled to stay healthy and really hasn't had much production over his NFL career. And one of the guys they brought in, his name is Ramel Keyton. He is a 6'2", 191-pound speedster with 4.46 speed. It's not like he's the fastest in the world, but he is 6'2", 191 pounds, so that speed score is really, really high. And actually, over the last 2 seasons at the University of Tennessee, he has averaged 18 or more yards per reception, which is pretty damn good. That shows that he really can stretch the field and win deep. And the Raiders need a player like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of locks onto the roster because of his speed and prowess as a deep threat. Now, I'm not sure what that means for fantasy, but in terms of someone that you could pick up for free, why not go after a guy like that? His name, again, is Ramel Keyton. Another running back or player in general is Daijun Edwards. And this is another guy that stood out to me at the Senior Bowl. In fact, I put him the second best running back at the Senior Bowl. And I did kind of qualify it. All of the running backs were pretty damn good at the Senior Bowl, but Daijun Edwards just looked to me like a running back that teams would like. He demonstrated very, very good patience. He easily had the best vision out of any of the running backs at the Senior Bowl. He had a ton of patience and good vision when he was making those runs, waiting for the holes to open and then just bursting through them. And what we've seen from Daijun Edwards at UGA is decent production. Last year, he had 900 rush yards and 13 touchdowns. The year before that, he had 770 rush yards and 7 touchdowns. And something that's pretty cool is his prowess at scoring touchdowns. Last year, in almost half of the games, he scored 2 touchdowns. He had 2 touchdowns in 5 out of 12 of Georgia's games last year, which is pretty damn impressive. That's a lot of multi-touchdown performances. And that's why I bring up he's got really, really good vision and patience, waiting for the blocking to get right and everything. And he lands with the Pittsburgh Steelers and has an opportunity here to probably be the RB3, maybe right above Cordero Patterson or kind of tied with him behind Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris. And I just think, Mike Tomlin loves these guys from UGA. He probably saw Daijun Edwards at UGA Pro Day and was at the Senior Bowl. I saw him there. So he probably saw some stuff from Daijun Edwards and wanted him on the squad. And they are going to run the ball a ton. We've already talked about it. They're bringing in Arthur Smith, so we know they're going to run it. Why not get Daijun Edwards? I think that's a really fun one. Again, guys, one of a big standout for me at the Senior Bowl and got a really solid landing spot at Pittsburgh as a running back. If an injury happens, he should be good. And I mentioned my benchmark of 20 receptions already as well. He had 20 receptions for 200 receiving yards last year at UGA as well. So he's a little bit of a pass catching back on top of being a really good patient runner at 5'10", 210 pounds. Just looks like a good running back to me. I like him. Daijun Edwards. Another running back to keep your eye on is Cody Schrader, who's landed with the 49ers. Now, this is a guy he didn't impress too much at the Senior Bowl, but he did have really good production last year at Missouri. To rush for 1,600 yards and 14 touchdowns in the SEC is nothing to scoff at. He also crossed that 20 reception benchmark, having 22 receptions for 191 yards. So he can do that as well. He's not a great receiving back, but he's a better receiving back than Elijah Mitchell, Jordan Mason, and maybe Isaac Guerendo. And so if anything happens to Christian McCaffrey, I could actually see Cody Schrader being the guy to be kind of the pass-catching running back here in San Francisco. He's 5'9", 202 pounds, and has a little bit of reception production in college. And maybe we'll learn a bit from Christian McCaffrey here in San Francisco. I think that's a solid landing spot. The next running back is Dillion Johnson going to the Tennessee Titans. We started the show talking about the Tennessee Titans receiving room, how Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears are both pass-catching running backs. Well, they do kind of lack this between the tackles grinding running back. And while Dillion Johnson did disappoint at the Combine, he was pretty solid at Washington last year. He ran for over 1,000 yards, had 16 rushing touchdowns, and had 24 receptions. In the year before that, had 48 receptions. And the year before that, had 65 receptions. So they might be able to unlock that again. And he demonstrated grit in the national championship, playing through an injury after getting an injury, having to sit out for a drive, coming back out and playing through it when he was clearly in pain. Who knows if that lingered into his Combine production as well. But Dillion Johnson got a solid landing spot in Tennessee. I would assume not only an injury would happen with them being some undersized running backs, Spears and Pollard, but also has an opportunity to kind of earn that goal line back role as well. So keep your eye on Dillion Johnson. And the last undrafted free agent rookie I want to talk about today is the incorrectly Wikipedia titled Michael Wiley. If you look at Michael Wiley, it says he's on the Dallas Cowboys on Wikipedia. We talked about that on yesterday's show, how I felt that was a really good landing spot for him. Think he could crack that roster. Well, he's actually on the Washington Commanders, so screw you, Wikipedia. He's on the Washington Commanders, which is also a really, really good landing spot, namely because Michael Wiley was another running back that stood out to me a ton at the Senior Bowl, and mostly because of his pass-catching ability. He's 5'11", 210 pounds, and played at Arizona. He's got 4.5 speed and was just a really, really good pass catcher at the Senior Bowl. Last year, he only had 311 rush yards, but also had 300 receiving yards. The year before that, 770 rush yards and 36 receptions. The year before that, 33 receptions. And like I said, at the Senior Bowl, was a really good route runner, had really good hands, was really solid after the catch, and is going to the Washington Commanders where there's not another pass-catching running back behind Austin Ekeler. And Austin Ekeler, at his age, an injury is likely, to be completely honest, given he also already has the injury history. And this Washington Commanders team is going to pass the ball a decent bit, with it being a Cliff Kingsbury offense. And I wouldn't be surprised if they rely on the run game. It's obviously going to be Brian Robinson and Austin Ekeler. But behind that, it could end up being Michael Wiley. I don't think Chris Rodriguez really did a lot last year. So I don't mind Michael Wiley at all. This is a guy who can maybe take that Antonio Gibson or Curtis Samuel. Again, a pass-catching running back on the Commanders would be huge if Austin Ekeler got hurt. So keep your eye on Michael Wiley. So one last time, I'll go through my list of undrafted free agent rookies to keep your eye on. Frank Gore Jr., Jalen Coker, Blake Watson, Jaxon Janke, Carter Bradley, Ramel Keyton, Daijun Edwards, Cody Schrader, Dillion Johnson, and Michael Wiley. Those are my guys that I kind of noticed when going through the undrafted free agent rookie list. Let me know in the comments what undrafted free agent rookies you're keeping an eye on. I think there's a ton of them out there, and I'm curious to hear who you guys are looking at right now. Might look myself. Maybe find out some gems that I missed. So I'm curious to see who you guys are targeting with your kind of fab and just super deep leagues. Who you guys are looking at that was undrafted. That should be everything for today. I actually don't see any questions in the chat, but let me just double check real quick. Okay, 10-team, 1 quarterback, start 8. Would you trade A.J. Brown and Nico Collins for Marvin Harrison Jr. and the 110? I don't think so. And I get it, right? Obviously, we all want Marvin Harrison Jr. But this is a bird in the hand, bird in the bush type trade. You have A.J. Brown, who's already proven he's a top 10 dynasty wide receiver. You have Nico Collins, who's now already proven he's at least a top 30 dynasty wide receiver option. And so to already have 2 stud wide receivers, I just wouldn't sell them for a chance at a stud wide receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr. And in a 1 QB league, I just had the 110. It ended up being Caleb Williams, which is awesome, right, in Superflex. But I mean, like, everyone has a quarterback in a 10-team 1 QB league. So I think I would hold on to A.J. Brown and Nico Collins. And I think A.J. Brown, especially after this extension, is a little undervalued right now. We saw him make his way up to a top 5 dynasty wide receiver last year after his spike weeks. He's now down to like number 8 or 9. I think he has some chance to gain some steam again. And, I think that there might be a chance for you to just maybe, even if you want to trade A.J. Brown or Nico Collins, maybe see what you could add to them to get Marvin and keep the 110 out of this discussion. I think, because I just don't think that's that valuable of a pick compared to the players you already have. That should do it, guys. So thank you so much for tuning in. This is another fun episode of Wake and Take. We'll be back tomorrow at the same time as usual, 10 a.m. Eastern on the Player Profiler YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'll be talking schedule release and whatever other news comes out and whatever else I feel like talking about tomorrow morning. So make sure you stay tuned for that. And follow me on social media at JFootballWine on all the social media channels you can find me. Make sure before you leave to go find the Wake and Take podcast. Link is in the description. Hit the like button for this video. Subscribe to Player Profiler and hit the bell so you get notified when we go live. Great stuff coming out daily here on this incredible platform. You guys have a wonderful Wednesday and a fantastic rest of your week. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to PlayerProfiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, Data Analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.